And even now, you know, some of them, I don't know how hard they were.
Simon Lee from UK Bouldering, and I'm very pleased to be here with John Gaskins today. Thank you for seeing me, John.
Okay.
Yeah. Just thought I'd just try and talk through, you know, your life really, you know, in terms of what got you into bouldering. You were actually in the village where you grew up.
Yeah.
Not moved far.
No, moved about 5 miles and then moved back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started climbing around here.
Yes.
Did
Did your dad climb as well?
My dad climbed a little bit, but he stopped mainly for family. So he climbed before he was married. Then when he got married and had my brother and I, by then he'd stopped climbing, which was organised by Cumbria County Council through schools.
Yeah. Was that with your brother as well? Or?
No, it wasn't. It was with a friend
I
was at school with. We put our names forward for a couple of places, got them, started climbing.
Yes.
And for the first, I don't know, good few years, I was just going out, doing routes, you know.
So it grabbed you from the word go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think because I got into it because of the fact that it opened up another avenue in terms of mountains.
Right.
And that was predominantly what I did for the first few years. Yeah, just went out, climbed around here, because of the fact that they were easily accessible.
Yes.
But also went out into the lakes, climbed there.
Right.
And then I guess 4 or 5 years later.
Yes.
That was the kind of the summer, so it would have been summer '89.
Yes.
When, having gone from kind of climbing, you know, HVS E1s, by the end of the summer I was climbing French 7C, 7C plus, because I just spent the whole of the summer bouldering basically.
Right. So you spent the whole of which summer bouldering?
89.
89.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And that was the point at which.
So what got you into bouldering? Because obviously that was very much a minority activity at the time. That was bouldering here. In the
that
lakes.
was bouldering around here. I mean, a lot of the routes around here are single pitch.
Yeah.
You obviously got Trowbarrow where it's kind of slightly bigger, but it's still single pitch.
Yeah.
But a lot of the ones, if you kind of look out through there, you can see Farleton Knot, which, you know, 30-foot high crag, but there's loads of boulders that are kind of 10, 15, 20 feet high all over the hill.
Yeah.
And I just used to walk out from the village because you can be up there in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And just
climb. Were they documented boulder problems?
No.
Right.
Because I knew the area because I'd been walking around up there and running there for years.
Yes.
So you knew where the escarpments are. Most of them aren't documented now.
Right.
There is the Lakes Block Guide to some of it, but
yes.
There's loads.
Were you
more
doing
bits.
Lines, or were you just doing limits like?
Combination, to be honest. Yeah. It was just going out and climbing because I enjoyed it.
Yes. And it obviously sort of took you to the higher grades with the sport climbing. As well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the kind of turning point in terms of I went at that point from focusing on climbing round here to be able to go out into the lakes and do routes there, to definitely kind of focusing more on the bolt routes after that and the bouldering.
So the sport 7C, was that at Chapel Head or elsewhere?
No. So I did that summer. I did a route, Sylvester Strange, which I think is 7C now at Scout's Car.
Right.
Did things like Chiseling the Dragon over at Marlham. A couple of the boulder problem traverses around here.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So you were how old? You were then what, 18?
I'd have been 19.
19.
Yeah.
Were you doing the bouldering as an end to get better, or something to do, or
I did the bouldering because it was easy to get out to.
Yeah.
You could go out there for an hour or two.
Yes.
Didn't need to make arrangements to go climbing
no
with
mats
anybody.
then, presumably.
No mats.
Yeah.
No. You could just kind of quickly go out, in the same way that people go bouldering now, but probably less gear because all you had was a short bag and a pair of boots.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was just because there was a couple of things that were easy to get at. And then some of the routes were obviously more involved, but just purely from the point of view of coordinating somebody else to go out with.
Right. There must have been a lot that happened to go from sort of 7C to repeating Hubble.
Well, that was 4 or 5 years between the two.
Oh, was it? Right. Okay.
Yeah. And in the interim, we were kind of out in the garage before us, and then I put some holds on the beams in my mum and dad's garage. So that would have been that winter then. So I was using the climbing walls at Ambleside and down in Preston. Yeah. And augmenting that with footless circuits on the garage ceiling.
Right.
So that
was there anything that particularly inspired you to do that?
I think the thing that I saw about in terms of the kind of footless circuits bit was after Mark Leach did Cry Freedom. Yeah. And obviously that's where his training thing was, and I thought, well, I've got a garage, I could do a kind of broadly similar thing. And because if you go back to that point, climbing walls all tended to be kind of vertical, just off vertical.
Oh, terrible, yeah.
And
but Charlotte
they
Mason's
varied.
steep though, isn't it?
It wasn't that steep. No, I mean, I don't know. It's difficult to kind of think now, but probably 15-20 degrees overhanging.
Oh, right, because I went there when I was young. It seemed incredibly steep to me then.
And the thing is, most of the holds on that kind of the steep bit were relatively good sized holds.
Right.
Which I guess was the thing with climbing walls, wasn't it, at that time? That as soon as you made it steeper, you ended up making the holes far bigger than you would ever get on anything outside.
Yeah.
So I had that, and then that was when I started building my own walls of varying descriptions.
Yes.
After that, over the next kind of 18 months, had a couple of different kind of iterations of climbing walls.
Yeah.
And then as I was in the interim, did things like Gigantic in Wilton, Magnetic Fields, Austrian Oak, things like that.
Yes.
And then kind of had a play on Hubble end of '92, it would have been, at which point that was the time when I thought, right, this is what I want to focus on trying to do. The first of the fixed ones that I built in my mum and dad's, which is probably the only time I've ever built a board which was designed to do something specific in terms of a particular route, because I built it specifically for Hubble.
Yeah.
So, started off with like a little kind of footboard bit which was a couple of feet high.
Yeah.
Then I had a section of probably about 4 feet, which was at about 85 degrees of virtually roof.
Yes.
And then it kind of went up the next bit at about 45-50.
Right.
But it meant you could practice the kind of flag move for the crux.
Yes.
With your foot under the roof.
Right. And what were you doing for a living around about this time then?
At the time, I was just climbing and...
Right. Would anybody employ you with your ponytail? Or?
Probably not, no.
So if you were just climbing, why not move to a centre of climbing like Sheffield or Llanberis or whatever?
I think I still had things around here that I wanted to do as well.
Yes.
And that was the other bit of it. There was still projects that I had. So whilst Hubble was the kind of main route project that I had,
yes,
there were other kind of bouldering cracks that I wanted to develop and things that I thought, well, I can stay here and do those things and go down and do Hubble as well, or try to do it.
Yes. And that attracted you because it's the hardest route in the country, or?
I think at the time, the two kind of big routes, one was Liquid Amber and the other was Hubble. Tried both of them in '92. The bit that tipped it towards Hubble wasn't necessarily the difficulty; it was actually the conditions.
Yeah.
On the basis that you could get more reliable conditions at Ravensthorpe than you could at Lower Pentrewin, basically.
You've got the tides.
And you got the tide, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of the tipping point between the two in a way.
So how would you sort of rate your strength now compared to 7 or 8 years ago?
I'm not as strong.
No.
Probably in terms of this, the board was at a steeper angle.
Yes.
And I could do bigger moves on those holds with worse footholds.
Right.
So before we moved, I tried some of the problems that I did in 2005 time.
Right.
And I couldn't do them anymore.
Right.
Even though I thought, I was climbing relatively well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I still go out sometimes.
Right.
But just go out and climb and
yes.
enjoy it for what it is. But I mean, I think there was quite a big gap, but you can never tell because sometimes it's only a couple of percent, isn't it? And it just feels a long way off.
Yeah, if you can't do it, it feels like miles, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, over the last 18 months, 2 years, I've done a handful of kind of like problems in the kind of like 8B range.
Excellent.
And I still couldn't get anywhere near some of the problems I was doing.
Right.
A number of years. And there were things that I would run laps on.
Right.
At the time.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, a lot of people on the comeback trail.
It's time though, isn't it? It's,
Yeah. No.
The training's the easy bit in a way.
Yeah.
Because I can come out here at 6:30 in the morning before work.
Yeah.
Have a good hour's training.
Yeah.
Still getting to work, 8:30.
Yes.
It's a little bit more tricky to go out and do things.
Yeah.
Because you can't just kind of do that hour. Because for me to get to most things that I've not done,
yes,
I'm talking about driving for half an hour, 3/4 an hour or more.
Yeah. There's nothing on your doorstep really here, is there?
That's not that much.
No. Did you start off with sort of naturally strong fingers, or did you just develop?
I think some of it is probably developed. I think it's probably different, in many respects, because now people will start climbing indoors, etc., etc. Whereas, at the time that I started, very few bolted routes.
Yeah.
And bouldering wasn't that documented, so it was difficult to tell because you were kind of climbing routes, weren't you, and you had to put your gear in, etc. So you had to get to a certain point before you felt you wanted to push yourself anyway. They tended not to be as steep, so they get fingerier, so you obviously develop that finger strength, don't you, on what, if you actually look at the grades, are relatively straightforward grades.
Yes.
Because even a lot of the limestone, the HVSs and lower E grades are actually really quite fingery routes.
Yeah.
So you develop that. So I think probably that, and then just getting a board that was steep and smaller holds, just kind of happened, I guess.
So what do you think made you sort of get the board? I mean, let's suppose any number of other people on that climbing course. What made you sort of go down the route of not bimbling in the mountains or whatever? What really sort of focused you on hard climbing is.
I think as I kind of got into it, and I would say probably that as I said before, the tipping point in a way was that summer in '89 where I spent a lot more time bouldering.
Yes.
And I just go into the thing. I enjoyed the problem solving side of it.
Yes.
And the physical challenge of doing the moves and then putting them together.
Yeah.
And then the training side is just something else that furthers it, doesn't it? Where you're pushing yourself.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that was it. It was the move and the physical challenge that really then caught my imagination more than the kind of the big routes in the mountains, for want of better. But
there's obviously no grade and glory, in that kind of activity at the time, really.
There was nothing. No, I mean, obviously there was bouldering, but it was pretty much a kind of underground activity done by a handful of people, and the thing ever got publicised.
Yes.
So which I don't know. I thought was quite nice, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But when there's no obvious sort of path to earning money from it or anything like that?
No, I mean, I think that, a lot of it was, it had the aim of trying to do Hubble at that point in time.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Hubble still is a hard boulder problem, isn't it? So if you want to do it,
yes,
if you're going bouldering, then it's a reasonable approach to kind of take to doing what is effectively a boulder problem.
Yes.
So,
do you remember? Tell me about the day you did it.
The day I did it, probably the 2 days before as well, because 2 days before I fell off the top twice.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Because because I've been trying it intermittently over the summer.
Yeah.
It was getting on into late September.
Yeah.
Wasn't really sure how much kind of longer I had in terms of the weather window in that year. We'd gone down, the Tuesday, I think it was a Tuesday we'd gone down, and it seemed it was really good conditions. Got through the crux twice, got up to the slab bit at the top, and I don't know, it's just one of those things that never really, you just suddenly think, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then before you know, you're off. Really thought I'd blown it.
Yeah.
Especially when it happens the second time, you think, so went back 2 days later, and
this was both with your dad or with your brother as well?
My dad and my brother. Yeah, for whatever reason, probably the experience of 2 days earlier, got to the top and didn't kind of bottle from it.
Yeah.
Kind of complete joy that you've actually managed to do it.
Yes.
And I don't know, you also feel slightly lost at the same time,
because suddenly your whole purpose in life is taken away. And bit adrift.
Because you just get to the top and it's like, well, what do you do next?
Exactly.
Which, I guess for me at the time then, because I'd already bolted what then became Violent New Breed thing, which I'd bolted end of 93.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure whether I could do it. I'd been there with a friend and he'd kind of looked at it and gone, yeah, there's holes there. And it was on the back of that I'd kind of put the bolts in it.
Yes.
So I'd tried it intermittently the year that I did Hubble.
Yes.
So then,
did you see that as a sort of similar type of Hubble thing of being really hard, really short, and
in a way I saw it as kind of like the next step, in terms of, the next version of Hubble at a higher level. Because for one, effectively you've got the hard climbing without then the kind of easy section on the top, really. So for me really it was the logical kind of place to go, and that was also one of the reasons why I'd stayed around here, because it was half an hour from here. So it was obviously a lot easier to get to from here than it was from quite a lot of other places.
And presumably you practiced it on your own on a rope, did you? Or?
No, there used to be a group of us went over there.
Oh, right, okay.
At one point there would have been 4 or 5 of us going over there trying different things there.
Oh right.
Well,
down in the cave and then you'd pop up?
No, all in the cave. So we had one of the friends who was trying Harry Tuttle, somebody was trying Militia, and then there's another line of bolts in there on the right hand side, which was a line that my brother was trying.
Right.
So which I don't think's ever actually been done.
Okay.
So there was a group of us who would go up there.
Right.
And I don't know, 95 I think I virtually lived there.
Yeah.
Because from the moment I'd done Hubble in 94, then my training turned completely to train that.
Right.
Changed the board around slightly in terms of my configuration on it to more replicate that rather than Hubble.
Yeah.
Put those extra small holds on that I've still got a couple of them.
Yes.
And just spent the winter basically trying that.
Right.
And then from the moment it dried out, that was it.
Right.
2 days a week, 3 days a week.
Yeah, and there was some problem with a stuck on hold.
Yeah, that would have been.
Did you ever get to the bottom of who took that off, or?
I believe it was John Dunn.
Oh right.
But that would have been the year after. So 95, I was trying it with the holds as they were. Then the start of 96, that was when the crimp broke on it. And it was one of those, you pulled on it, did a move on it, and ended up being footless on that hold at one point. And as I kind of swung out on it, you know, it had been fine all the other times, and it just snapped that one time. And my brother kind of tracked its kind of trajectory down to the ground. And it was one of those things, because you looked at it and thought there was something left there. Clearly wasn't as good, because the hold was there, we knew where it was. You know, if you kind of look around most British limestone and a lot of other places, some form of reinforced hold is kind of pretty common in a lot of places.
Yeah, more than people recognise.
Yeah.
You know, in the Raven Tour in particular.
Yeah, so since we knew where the hold was, because you could see where it had come down to, it was a pretty easy hold to glue back in.
Yes.
So we glued it back, taped it on so it kind of, you know, so the glue set properly on it.
Yes.
But yeah, just, I think I don't know, the day we went back and it had gone, I was devastated.
Right, I bet.
Because I was incredibly close to climbing it.
Yeah.
The year before, I'd fallen off touching the finishing jug.
Right.
So having then spent an entire winter training to do it, it'd have still been 9A plus bottom end probably.
Yeah.
And there weren't very many of them around at the time.
No.
I was,
right,
completely kind of devastated in terms of, you know, lost my focus totally.
Yeah.
I just lost my psyche for it basically anyway, irrespective as to the fact that, you know, the move was still possible. It was just like, well, no. And that was the point really where I actually started doing more bouldering and virtually stopped routes.
Right.
The only other bit I did, a kind of quick play on Brandenburg at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, from that point on for, I don't know, 4-5 years, hardly tied onto a rope.
Right.
Just went bouldering.
Right. So this
I
was
think
around about what time?
This would have been the mid-90s.
Mid-90s, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next time when I really did any routes would have been around 2000 or so, something like that.
Right.
Apart from kind of a handful of kind of like, you know, easier kind of days just going out and doing things.
Yeah.
It was just bouldering around here, developing the different crags, most of which I'd kind of scoped out at different points in time.
Yes.
You know, whether that ranged from kind of virtually developing like an entire crag like the bouldering of Fairy Steps.
Yeah.
You know, developing some of the more stuff on the Tom's Traverse bit at Woodwell, cleaning those up.
And you were full-time climbers still by this point, or? Yeah.
So I would do that and intersperse it with kind of trips out, go to Yorkshire, go to the Peak.
Right. You did some bouldering comps as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that'd have been early 90s.
Right.
Would have been around the time when I did things like Magnetic.
Right.
But yeah, it was never something that I kind of got into in quite the same way.
I mean, is that a thing that, I mean, because obviously you've done stuff on your own, you're used to doing it. I mean, do you find it difficult with people around? Do you find that distracting, or is it just that you've just not done it that way?
I just tended not to, you know, I think I was very good at kind of shutting out what was going on around me.
Right.
So, you know, whether there was kind of people there or not, I could focus on what I was doing and it actually was irrelevant.
Mm.
No, I think it was more that I'd grown up doing the competitive sports and competing in athletics, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And climbing for me wasn't, I'd started climbing for a different reason.
Yeah.
And especially as I got more into that kind of pure difficulty side of things, if you're trying to push that pure difficulty, then it wasn't quite the same thing, because you were doing problems that were, you were having to do first go, much lower level, and it didn't quite attract me in the same way as focusing, on that single move or kind of sequence of couple of moves.
So I'm back about after an interlude as the memory card ran out and had to go to Asda. So I think we were up to talking about finished on Violent New Breed. You kind of a bit disillusioned after that. Took up the bouldering, and this was what kind of year?
This would have been mid-90s.
Mid-90s.
So 96. So as I say, from there, that was it. It was the bouldering.
Bouldering.
So, as I say, that was some of the developing of new things, and just kind of keeping going back to some of the lines that I'd always known about.
Yeah.
And really just then working towards doing those.
Yes.
And then, probably over the kind of latter couple of years of the 90s and the start of the 2000s, that was when, a number of those things finally came together and I did them.
Yes. It seemed like there was a real sort of step up in terms of the difficulty of things in about sort of 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
Was that attributed to anything, or?
I think that one of the bits, 99 when we got married.
Yeah.
Different house, garage was a higher garage.
Right.
Different board, which is the kind of boards that I've got now, and I think it led to being able to train in a slightly different way, and I think certainly from probably the year or so afterwards, my climbing developed in a way that it hadn't previously, because my board was a much smaller board at that point.
Well, because you could do more moves or
because
bigger
you could
moves?
do more moves, bigger moves, and it also had that kind of the space around it that you could do moves where you actually were cutting loose and swinging much more, and then having to get your feet back on.
Right.
In a way that in a kind of conventional garage with a normal height garage roof you just couldn't do the same.
Right.
So I would say from probably kind of 2000, 2001, I definitely felt that my training was being more kind of beneficial and kind of broadening out a number of areas of my ability in terms of what I could do.
Right.
Which then I think in terms of the quantity and the difficulty of problems I was doing, probably then I suppose in the public conscience kind of came through somewhere around 2003ish.
Mm-hmm.
But for me it was the culmination of having known about these things for quite a long time.
Yes.
And then a kind of period of training over a couple of years on a better quality facility.
Yes.
Yes.
I
think.
So that was was that the time you went to Germany as well?
No. That
was
I've been to Germany a couple of times.
Yeah.
But in terms of when I went and did Gossip, that would have been 2004.
Right.
So that was kind of at the kind of latter end of that period, because obviously 2003 and to a certain extent 2002 when I was trying Brandenburg.
Yeah.
And doing kind of various other things bouldering wise, but a lot of my focus had been around Brandenburg at that point.
Yeah. And you were dragging poor Nicola really early in the morning.
Yeah. We were getting up and leaving the house at 3:30 or so on a Saturday morning.
Yes.
To get there for kind of when it first got light, basically.
Yeah, and that was through the summer, and you said into the autumn.
Yeah, 2003 was pretty much most of the kind of spring, summer, autumn, most Saturdays. Yeah.
Yes.
I think first kind of weekend would have been somewhere kind of like mid to late April.
Yes.
Last one would have been somewhere kind of like, I think, kind of early November.
Right.
And that was, you know, trying it irrespective of the conditions on some occasions. Just on that kind of hope that then it feels easier when you get a decent day.
Yes.
And
so what were the moves on what were the key moves on Brandenburg Gate then?
It's kind of pretty much the first about, I suppose, 8-9 moves.
Yes.
Just really bouldery.
Yes.
Each move is probably kind of not too dissimilar to the crux move off Hubble.
Right.
So you're talking kind of, you know, much more sustained in terms of the difficulty of the climbing.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to clip a bolt in the middle of the sequence, which fortunately is off of the one good hold in the middle of it.
Right.
Just, yeah, kind of very physical moves around the roof. Angle then kind of eases back a little bit, but you're still talking kind of quite powerful moves. Holds are starting to get smaller again at that point because the angle's kind of tipping back a bit.
Yes.
And
then you're going to make it funky.
You're going to make it funky.
Right.
You kind of get to the top of the hard climb, you make half a move to the right, and you kind of naturally fall into that kind of next section.
Yes.
Which, you know, when you get there, just feels, you know, markedly easier at that point, which you would expect. But and then just it was going straight up the groove above there. Spent a while kind of toying about where to finish it. Because you kind of go up that groove and so, do you carry on to the top of the crag? Do you not carry on to the top of the crag? And in the end, I kind of got to the point where, you know, it kind of slabs back. There was a good jug. You could get a no hands rest. There's the vague break, and that was where I was going to finish it.
Yeah.
But you know,
and
sadly, everybody knows that it didn't quite happen. But
but you said you got to a side pull just before you got into Make It Funky.
Yeah, red point, high point was going for a blind edge at the very end of the hard climbing.
Yes.
Don't know quite what, you know, whether it's that kind of mental thing again where you suddenly get there and
yes,
it suddenly hits you.
Yes.
Combined with the fact that obviously you've done a lot of hard climbing to get to that point.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was my high point, and it was from that point to the top, you know, significantly easier.
Yeah.
And you can never tell whether if I'd held that hold I would have done it or not, because
no.
you know, in theory, when you get there on red point, you could still fall off.
Yes.
But I don't think I've ever been that close to something and not actually gone back and done it.
Yeah, and of course that would have been totally groundbreaking if you had done it.
Yeah, it's one of those ones.
And what would you have got? 9A plus? Or
in retrospect, I'm not sure
9B?
what. Yeah, in retrospect, I'm not sure whether it's actually overall harder than Violent New Breed or similar but a different style.
Right.
But yeah, probably 9A plus would be somewhere in that sort of ballpark. But it's just a bouldery 9A plus, isn't it? It's, which, you know, is kind of different to a lot of the harder limestone routes now.
Yes.
Where, you know, they tend to be more sustained but slightly easier moves, relatively speaking, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So, but basically after that year, you didn't go back to it.
No, so that 2003, really close to doing it a couple of times. Got to autumn, started getting wet. 2004, had my university finals. It wasn't that easy to get there because of that, which was why I then ended up going over to Giggleswick, which was when I did Violent New Breed, because of the fact that it was half an hour's journey versus 2 hours each way. So it was a much easier kind of prospect in terms of working it. Started with a proper job as well then in the autumn, which kind of also, you know, not some of the kind of freedom of being able to kind of go off and try things.
Right.
And then the year after, that was when Eloise, my eldest daughter, was born. So that kind of effectively meant, you know, we're then talking 2006 before realistically anything would have kind of given me the chance to go back.
Yes.
And then, but in 2006, both my parents died.
Yes.
So climbing kind of, whilst I still carried on, it became much less important.
Yes.
And then,
so you didn't have that sort of single-minded drive.
No, I think that was the point at which it really, the focus that I'd had definitely kind of like moved on, and I started doing other things again, like going running in the mountains.
Yeah.
Which was something that I'd done before. And I think, I went from the thing of focusing single-mindedly on the climbing to enjoying other things.
Yes.
And then since then I've had kind of another 2 children, which gives more more things to do with them as well.
Yes.
So whilst the climbing's still there are other things that come into play.
Yes.
But it's nice because I can climb with them as well now. So
yeah. Let's talk about the sort of key boulder problems that you did here,
okay.
Which, as I understand it, is return of the fly, Isla, walk away, and obviously sort of shadow play. Are those the sort of main biggies, are they?
I mean, I guess you've got shadow play, you've got sit, start to walk away, you've got il pirata. Trying to think.
And the woodland roof.
You got at the heart of it all.
Yeah,
you got Kaizen.
Yeah.
I forget.
but the biggie seems to have been shadow play. Is that right?
Play.
Is that the hardest? Is that the hardest problem?
I don't know.
Because you did it relatively quickly, didn't?
Oh well, did it relatively quickly. But I tried it for several years. I think I did it in 2004, but I first tried it in it was 2000 or so.
Right. So
it was over a number of years.
Okay. Because a lot of people have turned up and said they think it's impossible. Can you just sort of talk through the moves on it?
I can't remember a huge amount about them.
Right.
Fairly obvious starting hold at the back of the roof.
Right.
And then there was a series of kind of layaways and small edges that you were kind of snatching up rightwards on. Then there was an opposing edge kind of layaway for your left. Couple of moves that we had: get your feet up into the roof on pretty poor footholds, which when we were in the garage earlier, I was saying a lot of it was around training on, bad footholds in terms of getting that body tension.
Yes.
And then you were snatching up into kind of better holds in the finishing groove.
Yes.
Somebody
asked about, is there a problem that's called reinvented, or is it?
Yeah, there's a problem.
Is there a spike foothold on it that you use? Somebody asked.
Oh.
You don't know?
On reinvented or
on reinvented.
Then I can't honestly remember. Reinvented, there was a block that you could start on, and then you kind of went up and slightly rightwards, because there's 2 ways of doing reinvented. So there's a right hand way and a left hand way.
Okay. So I'm a bit in the dark because
I mean the one thing I was going to say is I know that, and I've not been there for 8-9 years, I would guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know for definite that all the holds are still there.
No.
But when I've tried various things, there have been different bits of snapped at different points in time.
Right.
So without kind of going back up there.
Yeah, I mean, we were intending to go up today, but the weather forecast wasn't good, so I'm sure it'd all come flooding back if you had been on it.
I mean, we're talking about something that, I think it's probably 8 years since I was up there and actually looked at the problem itself. Yes.
I mean, we talked in the car about, the increased use of video, people being recorded on doing things, and your sort of film record is patchy, to say the least. what has been sort of recorded of what you've done or what you've tried that perhaps hasn't come out of the cupboard?
There's, as we were talking in the car, I mean, there's footage of me trying to red point Violent New Breed,
Yeah.
falling off going for the final holes.
Yeah.
There's footage of me on various of the boulder problems around here, you know, including some of the harder ones. I think, as we were saying, that, you know, the majority of the things that I did, we're talking kind of 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, camera technology was a much bulkier item then.
Yes.
And yes, whilst some of it was filmed, it wasn't as easy as it is now when people have got, you know, a phone that they can film on.
Yes.
So I climbed for, you know, for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if I was doing it now, I would film more. But I was never particularly good even at getting slide photographs, to be honest. I just went out to climb.
Right. Because I mean, I suppose it's, you know, difficult for the people cataloguing, you know, with today's mindset, you know, because you know, you did it for yourself, but these problems are, like, you know, world class in terms of difficulty, and clearly somebody like Jens is sort of struggling, you know, between you know, where to sort of put you on his list. I mean, that might not matter to you so much, but you know, and you know, you get the instance like with Rich Simpson, and it kind of casts, you know, doubts in everybody's minds about, you know, who's done what. I mean, I know somebody who doesn't believe that Haskett Smith's climbed Nape's Needle, and will talk to you at great length as to, you know, why it's. I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, I don't suppose there really is a lot to say, is there?
No, I mean, I think, you know, I climbed for myself.
Yeah.
I've got film of some things. I know what I climbed.
Yeah.
I think if you go back to that kind of point, well, actually, there's not that many people have film of a lot of things that they did at that point, because it just wasn't as easy.
Yeah. But I suppose in your case, you were out on your own early in the morning, you know.
Not all the time though.
No,
I was quite often at a number of these places with other people.
Yeah. Well, I said to you, Paul Reeves was there when you one time when you nearly did Brandenburg Gate.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. I mean, I think, you know, I think the world has changed in terms of how easy it is to film things. I think the other bit is in terms of what I was doing. You know, I was climbing things that I'd known about for a long time, and kind of the difficulty aspect of it, you know, wasn't what I was focusing on in that sense. And even now, you know, some of them, I don't know how hard they were. You know, you get so focused in on that kind of line and training for it.
Does it disappoint you that people haven't put more attention onto your route, you know, because perhaps there is that enigma thing surrounding that, that people that don't know quite, you know, where the problem goes, or, you know, or how you did it, or that sort of thing?
I mean, I think that, you know, the South Lakes to a certain extent has always been, you know, kind of slightly away from the mainstream in terms of where you get people coming to.
Yes.
You get more people coming to certain of them now, but, you know, I think it's pretty rare that you kind of get overrun by people at certain of these places.
Yes.
So from that point of view, it's not a massive surprise. Yeah, it'd be really nice if people came and tried them and did them.
Yes.
Just, you know, just from the point of view of somebody else's view on it.
Yes.
You know, is it a surprise? Probably not. You know, if some of them were in Peak or Yorkshire, you'd probably get more people going to them.
Yes.
But I think the other thing is that, you know, in terms of the training facility that I had at the time, well, you know, a lot of these problems actually are very, very similar to how my board was.
Yes.
So, you know, you're talking about training on something that's virtually identical angle-wise to a lot of these problems, with similar holds.
Yes.
And I guess I was prepared to get up early and try and get conditions at the best time.
Yes, and train early as well.
And train early.
You still train before work, don't you?
Yeah, I've always found that I climb better first thing. Whether that's psychological or not, I'm not quite sure. I've always felt lighter at that point in time in the day.
Okay, yes.
And just even in terms of kind of getting your feet to stay on kind of smaller holds and edges, I've always felt, first thing in the morning, get up, have a light breakfast, cup of coffee, climb, and yeah, I've always found that the kind of better time of the day in terms of kind of, maximising my actual kind of ability on problems.
Yes.
Once I get into later on in the day, I don't know what it is. It just doesn't quite happen the same.
Yeah, right. Are there any really special days that stick out in your climbing career?
Yeah, probably, but probably not ones that people really know about. I actually think that, and I do apologise for the kind of pronunciation of this thing, but there's a crag in Austria, which I think kind of translate roughly as Jungle Book, and there's a 8B plus font traverse across the bottom of it.
Oh right.
And yeah, I think that's actually kind of one of the things that I look back on and think, yeah, I'm really pleased that I did that, because it took me about half an hour.
Oh wow, okay.
And yeah, there's some things that you kind of, at the time when you did it, it wasn't a kind of something that was shouted about, didn't come across as a big deal, but actually I think now it's like, yeah, I think something like that.
Because you haven't always reported stuff. I mean, we were talking earlier about the stuff at Anstey's that you did, like Poppy and some in was it the mid-90s? And, I mean, is there actual new problems that you haven't even reported?
There's always been things that I've done, and in general, most of the stuff that I've done has ended up getting reported. But over the last few years, I've gone out, climbed, and not felt any kind of particular desire to publicise things.
Right.
Which is kind of how, when I started the bouldering, that was what happened.
Yes.
I would just go and climb. It's only at a kind of latter point as bouldering kind of then became more mainstream that, several years afterwards, quite a lot of the problems got publicity. I now just go out and go climbing and climb problems, and don't feel that I need to tell anybody about it.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of how it was originally.
Right. Are they really good? Are they good quality ones, or?
Some of them are just things that I've done because I wanted to do it. So you've maybe got kind of different link-ups around here of things, which in the grand scheme of things aren't kind of that significant.
Right.
Some of it is kind of going out and doing problems that the people have done.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, a handful of things possibly that are kind of, and it's not even kind of major, I wouldn't say.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking problems that I've enjoyed doing or enjoyed repeating, but other people have repeated most of these things, and the new ones, they're nice things that I've done locally, but whether anybody else would ever go and do them is kind of questionable. So yeah, I think the thing is with it that, to my mind, unless with the bouldering kind of things you're talking kind of font 8C, well, it's an old grade.
Right.
So, I wouldn't be, unless it's a kind of, major groundbreaking kind of line or whatever at a lower grade than that, then, yeah, to my mind, I wouldn't be reporting it anyway.
Right, so there's no like 8Cs out there that you've done that?
No, there's no 8Cs out there that I've not told anybody about.
Is there anybody that you look up to in your climbing career that you felt was a role model, or somebody admired, or somebody thought, oh, I want some of that, or
Um,
anything?
I think the ones that kind of really, to me, kind of stick out in my mind, and it's a lot of the things around when I was first starting to train more. And I think, people of kind of my generation will recognise that picture of Ben hanging off Agincourt.
Yes.
When I saw that picture, it's like, yeah,
That's hard.
that's what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just things like that. Some of the stuff that Fred Nicole did, and you look at them, and yeah, they're inspiring as well.
Yes.
But it's more often the piece of rock, and you look at it, and it's like, yeah, that's what has inspired me.
Yes.
I think because climbing's one of those sports that if you go running, you can have a bad day and still win, because if everybody else has an even worse day.
Yes.
Whereas climbing is climbing, and if you climb something on a particular day, it's actually because you've had a good day rather than the rock got easier for that day.
Well, the conditions come into it as well, but yes, the general point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So certain pictures like that.
Yeah.
But no, generally it's just been those kind of lines that I thought, I'd like to keep training to do that.
Right. Because some people have made a bit of fun about your lines, like the...
Yeah, with some things.
But obviously there's some very good lines that you climbed as well.
Some things have been a difficulty thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and some things it's been the line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of your last big line, that was the one at Thorncrag.
Yeah.
And you said that was around shortly after your dad died.
Just before my dad died,
Yeah.
but just after I'd found out that he was terminally ill.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was something I've been at and played at on a rope, originally with no real intention of doing it, because I'd kind of gone up thinking, well, it's a route, isn't it?
Yes.
But just to see. And then, having played on it on the rope and got the moves sorted out, realised that actually it was above the flat landing.
Yes.
And that you could get away with it as a boulder problem with mats. So spent time working it on a rope before starting trying it as a boulder problem.
Yes.
But as we were saying in the car, because of everything else that was kind of going on in my life at the time, doing it was great, but it wasn't as important then to me.
Yes.
And it was around that time that the climbing did become much less important, as we were talking about just before.
So how hard was it, in boulder grades?
I reckon it's somewhere kind of font 8A plus 8B.
Right.
I think there's a lot of, not kind of tricks involved, but a lot of it is around body position. When I first started trying it, it was absolutely desperate, couldn't figure it out, and then gradually you learn the body positions that you need, and it becomes a much more kind of doable prospect at that point.
Yes.
But you've got to spend the time, and I think it's one of those ones that, because I worked it on a rope originally thinking, well, I'm just going to go and try a problem that is going to be a route at some point, you work it on the rope and therefore learn the positions slightly better. Whereas trying it ground up, I could imagine it'd be really hard work to actually learn those positions.
Right.
So plus I think the other bit is that Thorncrag has a tendency to be slightly gritty.
Yeah.
But once you get a bit of chalk worked into the holds, then it makes a bit of difference to how the holds actually feel.
Oh right, okay, that's interesting.
So, and I think that, from my experience, that's irrespective of whether it's the kind of first ascent or the 20th ascent, once it's lost the chalk from rain, most of those holds up there feel, slightly looser, until you've kind of got them cleaned up and a bit of chalk on them.
Yeah. Have injuries played any part in your career at all?
No.
No,
apart from kind of things like split fingers generally,
So no tendon injury?
I've not had any problems at all. No.
Any? Do you put that down to anything particular?
I'm not really sure. Before I was climbing, was reasonably physically active.
Yeah.
Probably, you know, as we were talking about before, because I kind of built things up over a number of years before really kind of getting into the training.
Yes.
There was a bit of kind of adaptation and getting used to it. Always been relatively light, so probably never overstressed things, but no, for whatever reason, never had any problems, which, you know, whether that then helps because you've got consistency of training over quite a number of years with no gaps.
Yes.
Which is always one of those kind of things, isn't it, if you can keep that going.
Yes.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, then that's extraordinary. You know, given the holes that you're pulling on and still are pulling on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Well, we can only speculate on
No,
that
I have
one.
no idea.
Obviously hasn't held you back. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Do you have any pangs of sort of ego or desire for recognition? It doesn't seem like you have a lot, but you know, you know, some of the things that you've achieved are relatively overlooked compared to, you know, let's say other comparable or even lesser achievements. Does that bother you at all?
I suppose at certain points in time it would have been nice, but no, I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that, you know, I climbed those lines because I wanted to climb them. You know, whether that was because of the fact that, you know, it was to my mind a good line, or it was because I thought, well, you know, that's going to give me a next level of difficulty. I think, you know, yeah, it would have been nice because it would have maybe meant that I could have carried on climbing for longer as, you know, my main focus, but at the end of the day, you know, it didn't happen. I'm quite happy with what I did.
Yeah.
And
but you never thought to become a professional climber as such, you know, to make money out of it? Or?
No, because I was always, you know, more, I don't know, I was never completely comfortable with the whole thing of, you know, look, I've just done problem X or Y, or
blow your
X
own
or Y.
Sort of
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that I did more of, you know, when I was kind of linked into kind of some of the equipment manufacturers like DMM and Boreal in a kind of bigger way than I am now.
Yes.
And felt that I owed it to them as much as anything.
Yes.
But yeah, I would have been quite happy kind of going on and just going and climbing.
Yes. You meant, I mean, obviously Brandenburg was a regret in terms of sort of unfinished business.
Yeah.
Did you have any other sort of regrets?
I don't know, I think that was the kind of main thing that I'd invested a lot of time in, that, you know, that I felt I had a realistic chance of doing. I think those are the things, yes, that I think, yeah, it would have been nice to go and climb, but, you know, for varying reasons it didn't happen. Things like Action Direct, which I spent a few days trying at different points in time, but I think that's different to Brandenburg because I invested so much time in Brandenburg.
Yeah.
And in a way it meant more. But yeah, as I say, other things like we were talking about the wall in Traubarrow, yeah, realistically, yeah, I don't think I ever felt that I could do it. So from that point of view, I don't have any regrets about not having done it.
Right.
You know, and doubtless at some point it'll get done.
Yes.
But it won't be by me.
Right. Do you do anything to prepare mentally for, you know, a hard climbing?
In terms of focusing on them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is varied depending on what it actually is. As to whether, before I actually try, you know, in terms of whether it's a red point go, and I think I've always kind of, with the bouldering, each go when I've been trying to do it, I've always kind of tried to focus on it as if it's a red point of a route. So it's no different whether it's kind of 5 moves or whether it's 50 moves, is it, in that sense? It's just actually shutting everything else out, thinking through the sequence, thinking through how you need to move on the different moves. So that'll be on the kind of actual day. But the other thing is just around, making sure that you're maximising the conditions, and whether that is getting up at 5 o'clock to make sure you're there in the kind of best time of the day, or whether that's actually going out when it's a kind of a reasonable day in terms of the weather, having worked in worse conditions. And it's around focusing on the things. It's very rare that I've actually been actively working more than one project at a time. So I would have one main focus, and everything would revolve around that. Even if it was a boulder problem, I might go and do other things.
Yes.
But the end objective always was problem X or Y.
Yes.
It wasn't problem X and Y and Z.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, everybody's keen to do stuff, and are inspired by lines, but in terms of the dedication and, what you did to be able to do it, where does that motivation come from? And some people have asked whether, because I understand that you're a religious person, whether some of it comes from that.
I think that, God gave me a gift in terms of my climbing, which I tried to maximise. I think the other thing, as we were talking about in the garage, earlier, I think I've got a relatively high boredom threshold in terms of the training, and you've got to be prepared to put the time in. You can be given all the gifts that you want, but you've got to do something to use them as well.
Yes.
And that is, we were joking about it earlier in terms of the thousands of hours I must have spent on my climbing wall, but that's part of it.
Yes.
It's spending all that time on it in a very kind of single-minded way, and not getting deflected by other things that you could potentially spend your time doing.
Yes. Life can always get in the way, can't it?
Yeah. In the same way that now the only way that I can actually spend the time training is to get up and be out there at 6:30 in the morning.
Yes.
And to be able to continue with my training, that's what I do now.
Yes. But I mean, clearly you've not got the big lines or anything now. What is the?
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yes. I've always enjoyed training.
Yes.
I get as big a buzz out of training, and just doing new moves, new training exercises now as I ever did.
Yes.
And as I ever did out of any of the boulder problems or routes that I did.
Did you do a lot of reading around it, the subject at all, or is it just through sort of personal experimentation?
Some of it's through personal experimentation. Yeah. Knew a lot of the kind of principles of training through my athletics from when I was, my teenager years. So understood a lot of that. But yeah, then it's just.
Did that lead you to sort of rule out sort of supplementary stuff on pull-up bars or weights or whatever to just focus on the board? Is that sort of?
I think that my focus on the board rather than kind of doing some of those supplementaries was that a lot of what I wanted to do involved the body tension side of it, and it's kind of marrying up the ability to hang off the small holds with keeping your feet on, and
so you basically put specificness right at the top.
Yeah.
If you get as training specific as possible, then that's got to be the best.
Yeah, I've always tried to get my training so it mirrored as closely to, the style of things that I was wanting to do.
Yes.
And the vast majority of what I did is actually, if you analyse it, very, very similar in style, and very similar in style to my board. I think the only bit that would be slightly different is where I've used the campus board for kind of bottom end power endurance exercises, or as we were briefly discussing earlier, where I'll pack a lot of problems into a short length of time.
Yes.
So
to get the knock-on effects
just to
of
get
endurance.
that,
Yeah.
But then I've never been particularly into the kind of the stamina side of things, the kind of short explosive things, or kind of up to kind of about 10 moves is the bit that's really kind of captured my kind of imagination in terms of what I want to do. So yeah.
Some of the I did read that that some of the things that you tried, it might be even on single moves of a problem that it would be you get it one time in 100 or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be operata.
Yeah, but I mean, for the 99 times that you fell off, did you regard it as failure? And if so, how did you deal with it?
No, I think it's part of the learning process. I mean, I think with operata, for example, I always knew that starting sequence was not something that you were going to get every time.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time making sure that I knew how to do the last bit, because you don't want to get through those first moves and then fall off the next bit too many times if you can't get through the start that often.
Yes.
No, I mean, I think it's the same as the training. I enjoyed the whole process of trying those things.
Yes.
And no, it was never failure. It was just going out, learning more about it, maybe getting closer to doing it, maybe not getting closer to doing it.
Yes. You never felt the need to sort of go and be part of a scene and part of somewhere else and train with the best or that sort of thing?
No, I mean, I think as we kind of briefly discussed earlier,
exactly.
I had a lot of problems around here that I wanted to do.
Yes.
So they were the kind of motivating factor in the same way that if you're working in a group, then you kind of bounce ideas off each other. I had at different points in time, maybe 5-6 things that I was working up to do, and they were the things that made me try harder rather than having other people around.
I've got a specific question here. I don't know the problem. Do you know Shallow Groove? Is that one of yours or somebody else?
Shallow Groove at Trowbarrow, yes.
Yeah. How did you do the top move? Do you remember how you did the top move?
I assume by that they mean the move to the top of the boulder. So starts off on a shelf.
Right.
There was a poster picture of it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the picture's not how you actually climb it, which doesn't help. Because the day that Dave Sim and I went there to do it, it was too hot to actually do it the real way.
Right.
But there's a little edge, and then there was a gaston that you reach up into with your left hand. You can match on that hold, and then you snatch up to the top with your left hand.
Right.
And then from that point, you've basically done it because you can get both hands up onto the top.
Right.
But yeah, the key is don't try it the way that the poster showed it. Use the kind of shelf to get the right hand crimp first.
Right. Top beater.
Yeah.
Talk about the Bok incident.
Yeah.
I know it's sort of been reasonably well sort of documented. As I understand it, he showed you his boulder problem. He went away. You did it while he was away, but you did it with an entirely different sequence to the one he did.
Yeah, that was a couple of days after he showed it. Yeah, so and I tried it on 2 different days after that, I think it was.
Right.
But yes, no, I can't remember the exact kind of ins and outs of the sequence, but yeah, I did it a different way to the way that he'd done it.
Right.
As we were talking about in the car.
Yeah.
That's one of the kind of bits that I, in a way, not that I kind of regret, but it would have been nice if it had been filmed, and it, as I say, it was nearly was, because I had sent a text to a friend who was there, who lived there at the time, to say that I was going back to try it. Unfortunately, he didn't get the text until after it had been done, so...
Right.
But yeah, otherwise it would have ended up being filmed.
Right. Because you knew you were going to get it done.
Well, because I was reasonably close, and it was, just kind of arranged to go and do it, but Yeah.
Did that have any, you know, that because it was like a little scandal, well, not scandal, but, you know, obviously controversy, you know, two different viewpoints. Did that kind of demotivate you, hack you off at all, or was it just part of the course?
It's just one of those things that, you know, it happened.
Yeah.
No, it was, I mean, the thing that kind of took my focus away from climbing is the things that happened later that we've kind of spoken about before. But no, I mean, you know, I think it was a similar style of problem to a lot of the ones that I was doing around here at the time. You know, I think the other thing is that conditions vary day by day over there. Just happen, you know, having worked it on a couple of days when the conditions weren't great, I went back on another day, conditions were a lot better. Which, you know, it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. A couple of specific things. Can you? Oh yeah, we've talked about one top out. Darkness at dawn. Darkness before dawn. Can you describe the top out for that?
Glendassen.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got the kind of start across this thin crack line.
Yes.
You get a good jug, which is just before you get over to the kind of right-hand arete of the block. From there, build your feet quite high up the wall. Slap up left hand for the kind of fairly slopey top of the boulder. Foot in kind of by your hand, match, then go again to the very top. You know, we were talking about, you know, kind of tricks from earlier on. You know, I'd looked at it on a rope, so I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Don't know that I particularly kind of, you know, I think ground up again, it'd be one of those ones that it wouldn't be as obvious.
Right.
But yeah, once you've kind of figured it out off a rope, I mean, it's, you know, it's not kind of a straightforward thing, but you know what you do, and you know which bit of the sloping top you're going for, because it's harder than it kind of first looks like it's going to be from below. Somewhere there is some footage of me actually doing it, because I was there with one of my brother-in-laws.
Right.
But I'm not quite sure where that footage actually is. So
yeah. So if you can dig stuff like that out, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. Yeah. And moment of clarity, is that's not.
That's the thing at Thorn.
That's the thing, yeah. So again, you felt that it was an okay landing anyway, so you didn't need spotters.
No, didn't need spotters. I'd worked it on a rope. You know, I'd practiced the fall a couple of times, kind of actually still being on a rope, so I didn't kind of disappear off down the hill or anything.
Yes.
And yeah, you landed on the mats. So yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, there wasn't a great deal
kind
of difference on that one.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much covers it, and you know, thanks very much for you know, bearing with me today, especially when I ran out of the car and had to go to Asda. Yeah, that's great.